This Restoration Today special series, Seller Stories, is sponsored by Restoration Brokers of America. RBA works together with restoration company owners of all sizes to establish an exit strategy for today or the future and explore the ins and outs of the selling process. RBA has helped many owners successfully and happily exit their business by bringing well-matched buyers to the table. In the Seller Stories series, hear real stories from real sellers and buyers in the restoration industry. If you are looking for help creating an exit strategy or selling your business, visit sellmyrestorationbusiness.com. Hey there, thanks for checking out another episode of the Restoration Today podcast. This is the grand finale of the Seller series, and I am joined by the restoration broker himself, Gokul Padmanabhan. I have known Gokul now for a couple of years, and we've had some great conversations on M&A, and he's been a great resource to me in several positions that I've held recently. So Gokul, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for being part of the conversation. Thank you for all of your resources. So for those
Happy to be here, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. So for those who don't know you, introduce yourself a little bit, talk about your background in restoration, how long you've been here and all of that.
Yeah, it's pretty boring, but anyway, we'll start. I founded Restoration Brokers of America almost 14 years ago. And we help people prepare and sell their restoration companies or buy restoration companies as they expand to other markets. And restoration is all we do. So, we know enough to be dangerous.
Yes. And M&A is a huge part of the industry right now. A lot of consolidation going on, a lot of private equity coming in. So we're recording this in October of 2021. So I'm curious what you've seen just this year look like in M&A. What does this year look like?
It's a record year this year by all stretches of the imaginations. There's a lot of buyers coming into the market. Small buyers, there's medium buyers, there are regional companies that are going national, that are buying and getting into geographic expansions. There's private equity coming in into the market. So it is, by the simplest words, it's a huge seller's market this year. And I think it'll continue for another year or two. I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon.
So what do you attribute to creating the seller's market now? Is it the pandemic? Is it people getting to retirement age? Like, what is that attributed to?
Yeah, great question. So this happened in 2008. Okay. So you got to understand, like from a buyer's point of view, they're just looking where to implement money, where it would grow the fastest and give them the best returns. Mm-hmm. So when the economy is going well, people have a lot of choices. So restoration kind of seems to go a little bit more towards the background, because they could go buy a private equity, could go roll up, a bunch of distribution companies or, a bunch of dentists or, whatever this can be. And in 2008, the same thing happened. When the economy went down during the recession, there's certain industries kind of bubbled up to the top that were what I call recession resistant.
Yep.
And they started getting a ton of attention. Mm-hmm. Okay. So if you go back in 2008, 9, 10, and 11, M&A and restoration, even though we in the industry weren't talking about it, we in our firm saw it. Okay. Activity was very high. We grew all through the recession. We were doing more and more and more acquisitions. And I think the same thing's happening with COVID. I think when COVID happened, most restoration companies in most states were deemed essential. The business kept going, and it showed how resilient our industry is. And I think that's getting a lot of attention in the marketplace. So when the buyer's looking at it and, they want to roll up 1,000 restaurants, for example, or they look at, I want to roll up 100 restoration companies, they look at it and say, wow, this is such a better business. So when things get tough, restoration seems to really, really shine as an industry.
Okay.
So that's one of the big reasons why we're getting so much attention.
Okay. Yeah. Private equity has been huge. Yeah. So what do you attribute to the consolidation within the industry, the small, medium, large companies that are already within the industry buying up others? What do you attribute that to?
I think money is a little bit cheap right now. And I think our industry, like any other industry, is going through different stages. It goes from being very fragmented to, it gets consolidated a little bit. And then as it gets consolidated, it allows newer people to get into the business with newer local opportunities. And I think we're just going through a cycle of consolidation, and plus I think money's cheap right now. I think, there's a lot of liquidity in the market, and that's causing it. And it also makes business sense with when you scale and when you have footprints across the country and you can handle national accounts and national customers and large losses in any part of the country. It makes sense to grow through acquisitions. Much better way to grow a business than organically, I believe.
So do you think that wave of consolidation is going to continue? Do you think that there's going to be a breathing moment, or do you think that this is where we're headed and the industry is going to just continue to consolidate?
The tide always goes back in. Okay. So,
yeah.
And that is the funny thing. People have short-term memories. And so, I think it's going to be in waves. However, I don't think it's going to end in the next month or two. I think we probably got another 2 to 3 years of consolidation. And then at some point, it would not make a lot of business sense to consolidate. And I think at that point it slows down, and I think it normalizes. And I think as it normalizes, though, it does give new opportunity for newer entrepreneurs to get into the business. Mm-hmm. Like opportunities you and I sitting here probably don't even know exist, because it's going to show up in new ways, down the road. So, sellers market don't last forever. Buyers markets don't last forever. So these are all cycles. I've been through enough to know that they don't last forever.
You ride the wave while you can, and then adjust. Yes. Okay, so you have a ton of data on mergers and acquisitions in the industry, sure. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. You're going to have a report coming out, and we'll talk about that more at the end. But you also helped Scott Severe and I quite a bit with some data for some presentations we did over the summer, early fall. And Scott and I did 3 different sessions, a webinar and then 2 sessions at Core. And in those, we polled people on how many contractors have been approached about their company being acquired. And all of them, one room was like 90% had been approached. One room was 75, and one was probably maybe 65, if I remember correctly. Sure. Do you think that that's true? Like, are those legitimately being approached, or is it like, are there companies that are just kind of like throwing feelers out there? Like they might have been approached, but it's more like a casual, like, do you have any interest? We're not sure we're interested in you. Like, does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. So in our business, it's called deal origination. Okay. So, or generating leads, without any fancy words. And so, those phone calls are highly lead generating, slanted towards generating leads. And so, yes, you can get phone calls and I got a statistic I'll tell you, which is really interesting. So even if you get to a letter of intent, which is the first step, between a buyer and seller saying, hey, we need to get together, and start dating, so to speak, do you know only 49% of it actually even closes? Okay, so it's a difficult journey. It is not as simple as picking up a phone call. Yep. Having said that, activity is robust, and there's a lot of people being acquired, but there's a methodology to it and a preparation to it, and they're the ones that are finding success. Phone calls are happening. In our industry, they call it smile and dial. Okay, so that's a lot of what our industry is experiencing at the moment. They don't know anything about the business, and then they just, hey, smile. Are you interested? Are you interested? And then they look at, they'll look at 20, 30 companies and maybe pull the trigger on 1 or 2 of them. And that's why when we talk to our clients, I always tell them, I said, look, it's okay to take the phone and pick up the phone, but you got to prepare. And you got to understand the journey before you take that first step. Very, very critical.
So what is the difference between a business that is sellable and is not sellable?
Oh my gosh, I can talk the whole day about it.
People can read your article and look at the report and see other interviews with you. You answer that a lot, but
yes. Go to CNR, and there's a lot of stuff on there. Yeah. But no, I tell you, there are huge characteristics between sellable companies. We did a survey, and it's in the annual report, so go look at it. It's a teaser, okay? So we went and studied, all of our transactions about 2 quarters ago, and we found that companies that had multiple offers, companies that actually went to close, not just an offer or picking up a phone call or, having lunch with a buyer and a seller, but actually closed and the owner had money in their account and money transferred. we found that success leaves clues, and they all of them had a lot of things in common. Good financial systems, globally accepted financial practices. Good bench strength. They had a number two that could take over the business. They had an owner where the business was not completely dependent on the owner. Where the owner wasn't working 90, 100 hours a week. A really, really good mix of construction versus mitigation revenue. So those are what I would call maybe my core four. There's about six things, but six characteristics of companies. But I think people can go to the annual report and find the other two. So
yes,
I'll shamelessly plug your annual report today.
I love it. And Phil Rosebrook actually has a sidebar going along with kind of your article and some other things that are going to be in here. And he mentioned most of what you said. And then there's a few other is in there as well. Good resources. People can find this out. So let's see.
But it's also preparation. Let me just say one more thing. Yeah. So I think what people have to understand is running a business has a technology and has a process and a competency to it and a strategy to it, right? But when you're trying to sell a business, they're completely different. So you can't prepare a business to sell it as if you're running it day to day for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay, they're completely different strategies. And I think that's what I'd like the audience to understand is, preparing a company to sell and getting a 12, 24-month runway and getting everything ready, everything buttoned up so you can communicate that, you can market it, get a lot of attention, get a lot of competition, and get the best outcome for a seller is a completely different set of skills and strategy than running your business for 10% growth year over year or whatever, your strategic initiatives are for the year. Completely different. I'll give you an example really quickly. 3 years ago, we had a client running the business. So, well, let's sell it. We did a valuation on it. It came in around $4.5 million. We actually reduced the client's sales, from 25 million to 18 million, but we doubled the valuation. So yes, wow. So we went from a $4.5 million valuation to 9.75 and got an offer at 9.5. Okay, so how you prepare a company for sale and what is important to a buyer and how you market it is completely different than, me running it for the next 15, 20 years, year over year growth and things of that sort. So
what are some of the things, what are some of the things, or maybe the number one thing that surprises owners during the purchase process that they're just not?
How unready they are. It really is, because like we would ask for financial reports and we would ask for 15 kind of reports. Well, we don't keep this, or we don't do it this way, or we have no data on this, things of that sort. So I think it's just the unpreparedness of it.
Okay,
really, hands down, the number one. Yeah.
So this is more like the soft skills side of things and the leadership side of things, and maybe more up to the owner to decide. But do you ever coach your clients on whether or not to tell their team ahead of time? Don't tell their team. I know that there can be some value in bringing a really good team into the new company if it's bought, and you don't want people to jump ship. So do you ever talk to companies about that, kind of advise one way or the other?
Yeah, I tell you, when I sold my own business, that was probably the most racking. Just lose sleep over it,
Yeah.
Do I tell, do I not tell the employees? And I think, there's no set rule in it, to be really honest with you. What I find really works is once you get the letter of intent signed, you're going to go through due diligence. You're going to go through about 30 days of due diligence. And I'll be honest with you, I may sometimes probably better get a root canal than go through due diligence. It's tough.
Yeah.
And I think at that point, what I find works is maybe bringing in a core group of leaders that you can trust and say, hey, you need to help me through this. And then once the deal is done, then you expose it to everybody else. I think that kind of phased approach is what we see working quite well for us. But when I sold my business, a lot of sleepless nights.
I am sure.
Identifying the leaders, how will they react to it? Will they all get up and leave? All these kinds of situations, but having said that, even in my own experience, when I talked to my leadership about it, when I sold the business, my company, it was bittersweet, but they understood it, and I think a lot of times employees know it quicker than that you are not the right shepherd for that company anymore. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reasons, you may be the one holding it back. They know it. So it's a little bit of a bittersweet moment. And but it all works out once you get them in there.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. I liked Scott Miller. He was the first episode of the Sellers Story series, and he talked about his strategy. And he told people once it was all said and done, but he talked about he was like making visits to people's houses and stuff until midnight that night or after to make sure he visited every single person. And that is a good leader to care that much about like conveying that message to your people and not just like surprise kind of. So that would be nerve-wracking. I don't know. So
it is nerve-wracking, but I tell you, most of the times I think, like I said, I think, the entrepreneurs are the last one to realize that they're at this moment not the best shepherd for their companies and their employees and their customers. And I think your leadership team and everybody else knows it a lot quicker than you do. So it's usually taken better than what you anticipate sitting in your bedroom or in your living room thinking about it. So I think as long as you have a clear communication strategy and you're talking about why this is good for the company to get a newer owner with different goals and maybe you're in a different part of your career where you don't want to, you don't have the motivation or even the need, to go do it. I think the communication is really important, and strategizing how to communicate those things are really important. I mean, on our staff, we have a communications person and leadership person, on our staff. And when we get to it, we clearly sit down and strategize what to communicate, how are we going to communicate, what is the messaging going to be, what are the channels of the messaging. So I think once it's planned out, it works out quite well.
So I know you as a broker, like you don't even just work with any company that comes to you. I know that you are big on finding people that are the right fit and you're not afraid to walk away and end a deal, those kinds of things. So where are your lines? Like, what are your ethical lines and stuff in all of this?
Well, in my younger days, I would just take on as many clients as possible.
We all would, right? Like, let's go.
I got a little bit smarter, even though I don't think I'm completely smart yet, but I got a little bit smarter.
Yeah.
And what I find is, it's about working with people that are on purpose with you. And I think if they're not on point and on purpose with your customers, those problems only get bigger. So as I've done decades of business now, I've realized that I only work with clients that I get along with, that are on purpose, and we have a great relationship. And, it's worked. We've doubled our business 3 years in a row. So that strategy is counterintuitive, but it works.
So I think that maybe the industry hears that there's all this M&A going on, but if you look at the number of press releases that come out, I maybe get a few a month, but my guess is that there's a lot more mergers and acquisitions going on than the press releases we get. Do you think that that's true?
Yes, there's a lot more M&A going on than we are. So there's two things. I think the number of phone calls that people are getting, they're getting 3-4 a week. Some of the bigger guys, I think that's true. There's probably getting more phone calls than we would get in a survey, for example. But I also think the number of businesses that actually close from that phone call are a lot less than what people are saying. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I think the success rate of those are a lot lower, I would anticipate, than what the word on the street is at the moment.
So what are the type of companies looking to buy? Like, tell us a little bit about the buyer side of things and the makeup of those companies that are now looking to grow through mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah. So let's just take it into two levels, right? So companies that have profits of over $1 million, let's say, for example. Okay, they kind of go into the bigger company category in our industry. And you got companies within our industry that are operators today that are trying to get into a national platform. They make the great buyers for it. They know the industry, they know what's working on, they already have national accounts, They got relationship with TPAs, so it makes a lot of sense to acquire. And plus, even the companies that they acquire seem to do really well because they're bringing all that business to that one company that they acquired, and they're giving more opportunities to the people within that company. So I think $1 million and up, you're getting a lot of the companies that are trying to get into the national platform. They're great buyers. You have some family offices that are trying to get into the business, and they're trying to buy a few. In the Northeast, there are a few that are, slowly getting into the industry. And then you got, maybe about 5 or 6 private equity that are in the space today that have one or two big offices, and then they're trying to do acquisitions around it to create like a regional player or a regional platform. So you got those 3 kind of buyers. And then inside of $1 million, if you're you have a lot of high net worth individuals that are coming in, maybe an entrepreneur that has sold 1 or 2 companies and then wants to get, this is their 3rd rodeo, so to speak, and they're well-heeled and they got money to do it. And they do really well also. So you got 2 very different sets of, 2 different buckets, so to speak.
Okay. How is the franchise world being affected by this? Like, what is their role in the M&A space?
Yeah, very, very interesting, So, there are a few big ones, obviously, in our industry. I'll keep them nameless.
Yep.
And I think they're not immune from what is going on. I mean, they're also consolidating, so they're also going to a point of saying, hey, let's get fewer number of franchisees owning more territories so they can take care of scale and, take care of large loss and participate in bigger events, so they're also responding to the industry quite a lot. And franchises themselves are being bought out, by private equity. So they're not immune to this at all.
Yeah.
But I think franchises play a really important role in our industry. I think it's a different kind of operator. It's a different kind of buyer, but they're very healthy and they serve our clients really, really well with standardized processes and standards of servicing the customer. They do a great job.
Do you see companies being bought that don't do TPA work or program work, that just do strictly independent, have done their own marketing, bring in their own work? Do you see them being
there's a lot of discussion whether the TPA or not TPA.
Always.
And today, no, I'm just kidding. I'm not going into it. Okay.
Yeah, no, don't go there. It's never a good thing.
No, I'm not going into it. But, I don't think that is really the question, right? So I think the real question from a buyer's point of view is your revenue sources diversified? Mm-hmm. So if you get 10 different revenue sources, and if one goes away, the business is not going to go under, so to speak, or the business is not in trouble. Yep. I think that's what they're looking for. So they're looking for a well-diversified marketing plan. So if so I don't think there's a lot of debate whether to TPA and not to TPA, and that's maybe for another day, or that's not even for me, maybe. But I think from my perspective, it's more about, do you have a well-diversified customer base? Do you have a well-diversified sources of revenue? So, if 1 or 2 go away, the business still keeps going. I think that's more important. Okay.
All right. Well, I don't know that I have any more questions. Is there anything that we haven't touched on? And are there any, so those who are listening or watching, the November-December article of CNR is going to have a ton of M&A content. I really wanted the industry to understand the landscape. And we're also going to talk about the CoreLogic NextGear acquisition and what that means. So there's a lot of talk both on the business side and the vendor side, all of that. So Gokul also has this amazing resource that he is offering to contractors for free, which you can get through the CNR website and probably through his website as well. That's this annual report. So are there any teasers you have for that? You want to leave it all closed lips until people can get it?
Yeah, so I'm very excited about it. I've been wanting to do this for a while, Michelle, and we've been talking about it. We're finally getting to do our inaugural report. And what this report gives you a snapshot of all the mergers and acquisitions in our industry. Okay, it's got what is selling. It's got multiples paid, it's got who's buying, what they're buying, how long things are on the market. So anything in and around which we think relevant with mergers and acquisitions is in there, along with who's buying, what they're buying, and what they're paying for it. With that, I'm going to say, go to CNR Magazine and open it, read it, click on the link, and you can access that report.
Perfect. Good plug. I like it. Well, Gokul, thank you very much for your time. I've enjoyed the conversation. You are a wealth of knowledge, and this was really great information. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
For more Restoration Today, visit our website, cnrmagazine.com, or find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts.